You've probably seen these blocky cartoons in Vox's videos or on the site. They're called Woccas. But now, I'm about to show you something that we've never shown the public before. I call it the Wocca morgue, because it's where Woccas go to die. Okay, here we are. You might recognize some of these Woccas and maybe even some of these assets. There are famous people like politicians and Supreme Court justices. There's also me and lots of my friends. But to understand the history of Woccas, we have to start with these. The very first Woccas. About 3 years ago, I was a graphics reporter at Vox, and we had conducted a survey on whether people would still let their kids play football. And I really didn't want to represent this data with just bar charts. So I started messing around in Illustrator, and I realized that I didn't know how to make anything but rectangles. So I started making these blocky avatars. And I was really inspired by this book called Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. In the book, McCloud talks about self-depiction, and one exercise is he tries to see how much you can take away from an avatar while still capturing the essence of a person. So this is what I ended up with. And here's the first time Woccas were presented on Vox. In my head, this is the sound they make when they walk, which is why they're named Woccas. And yeah, that's my voice. Anyway, I thought this would be the end of Woccas, but a few weeks later, the story about the Panama Papers broke, and we had this idea of explaining it with a metaphor which someone on Reddit had thought up. So we did. So my colleague Javier Zarcina helped spruce up this version, so they now have shadows and facial expressions. And this thing went bonkers on the internet. So after that, I started to use Woccas to explain lots of things. Income inequality, Brexit, and even Elon Musk's obsession with this idea that we're living in a computer simulation. This scene right here, it's one of my favorite things I've ever made at Vox. But after a few years of playing around with Woccas, I had this realization that they're just a design language for showing how humans interact with each other. For example, here's an explainer about Obamacare. It's a story about the challenges of making a healthcare system work for both sick people and healthy people. But I thought it was a little disingenuous to kind of leave out identity when talking about human interactions, because whether it's your race or your gender or whatever else, these things shape the way we view ourselves and how other people view us, and it really changes our experience of the world. So I started to kind of incorporate that in a lot of the Wocca representation. Here's a piece I wrote about why college is a really tough environment for poor students. The research shows a big part of it is feeling inferior or like you don't belong. So I use Woccas to kind of visually show that discomfort. The thing is, I'm an Asian kid who grew up in Kansas. I often felt uncomfortable and out of place doing really simple things like going to the mall. And I wanted to visualize Woccas in a way that would show that identity really does shape our experience. But another thing that's happened is that other people have started to adopt the Wocca language, and it's been really fun to see how they play with that. My colleagues Liz Sheltons and Gina Barton were among the first to take a crack at animating these guys. My former colleague Mallory Brangan gave them a completely different feel, and my Woccas feel completely different from that. It's also been really amazing to see other people embracing Woccas as a way to represent themselves online, and people close to me have even started to gift me Woccas. But even though they're cute and they look like visual decorations, I think it's really important to remember why they're useful. They're a way to represent humans who experience the world differently and how that shapes the way we interact with each other.